So my name is Patrick Larkin. I'm the Vice President of Weatherization for La Casa de Esperanza. And we have a few different programs that I manage, and we have a team of about 35 people that operate our programs, and 40 including our finance team who we work closely with. And obviously the weatherization department and financial stability, as you can tell, work together on occasion too, to partner up with some of these things to get even more information out there. I've been in the weatherization part of kind of in all kinds of different roles for a long time, over 25 years, kind of accumulated a bunch of knowledge over that 25 years. And hopefully I can impart a little bit of that knowledge on to you in this presentation. So I don't know, can everyone kind of take a turn and just kind of speak up and kind of what they're looking to get out of this presentation? If they have something on their mind, if they're like, oh, I really wanted to know what this specific part of my bill is, how much should I be paying per month? How much does a new refrigerator save? You know, any kind of questions or any kind of things where you came to this presentation and you were like, I'd really like to know this.
My name is Beth.
Can you hear?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Why don't I call, I see Beth on my screen.
Hi, I'm Beth. Thanks for doing this today. I guess I was interested just for any tips, but the main thing is, so last year I did the budget billing.
Okay.
And so just because, you know, single mom, just struggling, I'm this is my third year of having a new house, first time homeowner.
Okay.
Pedro helped me. I was counselor. He was my counselor. So I did the budget billing. That was working well. And then when like the settlement part came, that's where I kind of got screwed up, because then there was more of a lump sum, I guess, like what they had kind of planned for. And then it kind of got me behind, and then it was really hard to catch up. So I chose this last year not to do the budget. And I'm kind of struggling. I took advantage of like the We Energy, like the box, like to like do like the windows and things like that. So I guess I'm just here to just kind of hear like what there is to offer. So there's nothing I can think of right away in mind. So I'm just here to kind of hear any ideas, because I'm just open. So that's why I'm here today. So thank you for being here.
No, thanks for sharing, Beth. Appreciate it. Tim, was that you that I heard? Was that your voice, or was that someone else's?
I don't know if he's listening, but
Okay.
very new homeowner. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing all the right things, and there's a lot of things I'm not aware of. So just more informational for me.
Okay. Thank you, Julia. Thanks for attending.
Sure.
And I'm not sure, there's a gentleman with a hat on. His title is Motorola Moto G Play. You're muted though, sir. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. How you doing?
Okay, great. I'm doing well, thank you very much. I'm looking to get some information about turning a house that I do get into more energy efficient through a solar panel or different ideas like that.
Okay. We can touch on that. I didn't prepare to give all kinds of stuff on like renewables and stuff, because those are kind of a little more advanced and probably a session all on their own, but we can touch on those. What's your name, sir?
Paul Potke.
Paul, okay. Sounds good, Paul. Thanks for attending. I will touch on that, but if you want, after this session, if you want greater details on that or something more specific, we can provide you my contact information and we can get you that.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Also, I was looking for maybe if I do get a house that's maybe a little bit older and wondering if you guys could help me maybe insulate it better. I know you guys do an insulation program with
Yep.
the paper, the newspaper,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's a very great program. And I was just looking to learn a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that. Yep. Perfect.
Certainly.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else got something on their mind why they attended this session and they really wanted to know something specific or?
Yes. Hi everyone. My name is Melissa. I'm
Melissa.
here. Hi. I'm just here to get the tips and tricks of what to do and what not to do. Um, to see what some of the things that has worked out for you guys as well.
As far as tips and tricks, as far as like saving energy?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Nice to meet you. Thanks for attending.
Thanks for having me.
Hello, Patrick. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Tim.
Yeah. I decided to take this class today to see if there's any kind of tips or tricks I can share with my clients and customers.
Oh, nice. Sure. Thanks for attending, Tim. Nice surprise to see a familiar face on here. If you guys don't know, well, you guys wouldn't know. Tim works as part of our weatherization team as an energy auditor. Well, not as an energy auditor, as a quality assurance officer. Sorry. So Tim's out there kind of making sure the work is done right and looking at the completed weatherization work and making sure everyone's doing things the way they're supposed to be doing out there.
So I've got 17 years experience in energy efficiency, but there's always something new to learn.
That is true. I'm still learning every day. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for sharing and speaking up and let me know what's on your mind and what you were trying to get out of the session today. I'll share the screen and get started. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, so going to talk about energy efficiency and utility management today. Once again, thanks for attending. Kind of the four main learning objectives we're going to talk about are how do you read your utility bills and how do you understand them? What are the most important kind of key points you want to look at the utility bills? How do you reduce your energy costs? Like, what are the average energy costs? What are the biggest users in a home? Where do you spend your most money on a home when it comes to energy cost? And then once again, what are the most beneficial things you can do on your own to kind of reduce those costs? How do you protect and maintain your home? There's a lot of little things that people don't usually think of when it comes to maintaining your home or doing things that by doing maintenance on certain things in your home, it's going to save electricity or save utilities. So we'll talk about those things. And then we're going to talk more about what programs are out there that can help you weatherize your home or save your home energy by participating in these programs or help you with your utility bills as well. All right, so start off with where does a home in Wisconsin use the most energy? So where do you guys think, right? We're in Wisconsin in a cold state. Spend a lot of time probably heating our homes, right? So a majority of our utility use in Wisconsin comes from space heating. That makes a lot of sense, right? And then on this kind of pie chart here, you'll see that electronics, lighting, and other appliances are about 30% of the energy use. and that's up there, right? That's getting up there. So if you're thinking about this kind of pie chart, at least for me, I always think of where are your biggest opportunities, right? And there's two kind of areas for your biggest opportunities. It's either the areas where you use the most or the areas that are the most expensive, right? So as an example, if you see refrigeration is 5% on its own, right? I mean, refrigerators are operating all the time. You rarely have them unplugged, and if you do, it's probably because you have a problem, right? So refrigerators are on pretty much 24/7 and operating to keep everyone's food cold. And if you have an old clunker, 1970s refrigerator that's avocado green, that thing's probably costing you a fair amount of money every year to run. So even though it's 5% of your total home energy use, if you have an old clunker, it could be costing you, could be a larger proportion of money rather than equivalent to what it's actually typically using in a home percentage wise, if that makes sense. And then air conditioning, like I said, Wisconsin being a primarily space heating state, right? We spend a lot of time in the winter heating our homes. That's probably, and then we have what's called shoulder months. Shoulder months are like the spring and fall when you typically don't need to condition your home much. So you'll have your heating season, which is winter. This is kind of weatherization speak. Your shoulder months, which are spring and fall. And those kind of seasons, you're not usually using a ton of conditioning, right? A lot of people have their windows open in the spring and fall. You don't typically spend a lot of time heating or cooling your home in those seasons. And then, of course, we have about 2 weeks of summer, right? Usually. So, just joking, but in all seriousness, we probably only use air conditioning for a couple months in all reality. So air conditioning is not as big for us as it is for, say, the southern states, right? Obviously, if you live down in Texas, this graph is probably turned around, right? A majority of your energy use is probably in air conditioning, and then that 6% air conditioning is probably heating down in Texas, right? It's not very much.
Yeah.
So air conditioning for us in Wisconsin, pretty small. And water heating is about 18%. So that just gives you an idea of where the typical energy use is in Wisconsin for homeowners, and then also kind of where you might see your biggest benefits. So electronics, lighting, and other appliances is obviously like a really easy, basic thing to do, right? So that's why they kind of came out with Energy Star. Energy Star is a federal program that rates appliances, and those Energy Star rated appliances use a certain percentage less energy than one that's not Energy Star rated. Also, they look at some quality metrics in there as well to get that rating. So if you can upgrade any kind of appliances to if one goes out and you can look for the Energy Star logo, you're always going to be on the right track. That's a real simple and easy thing to do. And if your home typically uses 30% of electronics, lighting, and other appliances, if you can upgrade at some point to a newer, more efficient one, that's a really easy thing you can do as a homeowner, right? All right, so now we saw kind of what the average kind of uses percentage-wise were in a home. Now, what is kind of the average monthly usage for someone in Wisconsin? So electric is about $130 a month. And we're talking dollars because I think everyone kind of thinks about dollars. We'll get into actual usage in a minute. So electric averages about $130 a month. Natural gas is about $60 a month on average. And then water and sewer is about $73 a month. So total, that's $263 on average every month, or about $3,000 annually. So it's something to think about if you're one of the people on this this virtual kind of training that is thinking about buying a home, thinking about kind of a budget and thinking about how much you need to kind of put aside every month for utilities is something that's very important to do, because it's a little bit of a chunk of change just in utilities. And if you pay it now, then maybe it's not a big deal. But sometimes these things, if you rent, sometimes these things are included in your rent, and so that extra few $100s a month can be have a big impact. All right, now we'll get into kind of the usage. Talked about the money, and we'll talk about kind of how you get to that point next. So for electricity, they measure electricity in kilowatt hours used. So that's the important thing, because you're purchasing kilowatt hours essentially from the utilities. So, and kilowatt hours is what they measure as how much electricity you use every month. And then natural gas, that metric is called therms. So they measure the amount of gas that you use in therms. And that's also something that'll be a key point to look at on your bill. And we'll look at a bill in a second for a sample one. And then when you're comparing kind of usage or monthly charges, you don't usually want to look at money, because there's things that can change. They can have service charges that go up that aren't part of your actual usage. They can have service rate increases. So you might pay 15 cents a kilowatt hour 1 month, and there might be a rate increase, and now you're paying 19 cents a kilowatt hour in the next month or the next year. So if you say, well, what the heck, I spent, what was that average, roughly about 200, I think it was $190 a month in just electricity and gas, or $130 in electricity, and say a year from now it's $150, and you're like, what the heck, like what's going on? It might not be that you used any more. It might be that utility rates went up. It might have been you were paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour, and now you're paying 19 cents a kilowatt hour. So it might not be that anything has changed besides for the utility has just raised your rates, and you're seeing the impact of those rate increases. So important when you're looking at, and when you're comparing monthly or yearly usage, that you do look at the kilowatt hours used and the therms used, and you're comparing what you used to what you used versus how much you paid. Is there any questions yet? So here's a sample I pulled off the We Energy's website. We're not going to hit all these numbers that you see on here, but this was the easiest way to pull a sample bill and kind of talk about it without using anyone's actual bill. I don't know. Can you guys see my cursor? I can't tell.
Yes, we can.
You can? Okay. So I can use that to kind of point things out. Great. Thank you. So if you look at number 6, some of this other stuff, most of the stuff is not super relevant to our conversation. It's like 1 is obviously the numbers for We Energies and so forth, and 2 is where your account number is, 3 is your information. So we don't need to talk about a lot of that, but we can start at number 6. So 6 is, well, I guess 5. We'll start here. You can see where it says electric service, residential electric service. So this is really getting into, obviously, your electrical charges for that month. And what you want to look at is this KWH. You want to find the KWH and how much you used in that billing period, and then what the cost was. So you can see in this sample bill, hopefully you can see 669 kilowatt hours at 19,342 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you do that math, that equates to $129.40. And then there's this fuel cost adjustment, which I'm not exactly sure what that is, but that's probably some kind of rate We Energies charges for fuel moving cost or transfer cost or something. So they add in an extra tiny little bit onto that to make that even a little more expensive. So then you can see there's an environmental charge that they add as well. So all these things add up to basically what is your cost per kilowatt hour. So all these things are kind of embedded into that cost. You can see that is also the environmental control charge. It's just a small cost, ends up to being about 35 cents. So, and then you can see at the above, this bill is for 29 days at roughly 49 cents a day. So that's actual like the standard utility cost, just to have them supply you the utilities. It doesn't matter how much you used, but just for We Energies to supply you the utilities and the energy for electricity, it's 49 cents a day, a little above 49.3 cents a day. So that ends up being about 14 bucks. And then, like we said, right below is the usage. So in this sample bill, they paid $14.30 just to have the electrical service from We Energies. Then they used 669 kilowatt hours of electricity at just over 19 cents. That was 129-ish dollars. And then you have these kind of adjustments that they tack on to the end. So for a total bill here of $148.53. So once again, the kilowatt hours is really what you want to look at. If you're curious, like if you're trying to compare bills again, like we talked about just a few minutes ago, this is 19 cents. So if you say, in a year from now, you were looking at your next year's July bill and you were at, let's just say 672 kilowatt hours, you use just a few less, which wouldn't typically make a big impact, right? That would be about 60 cents more if the cost stayed the same. But this cost per kilowatt hour goes up to, let's say 21 cents. Let me do the math here in a second. So 672 times 0.21, that would be $141. So even if you use roughly the same and the kilowatt hours went up to 21 cents, it would be about 12 bucks more in the future for that month with basically using the same amount of electricity. So for electricity, like you really need to pay attention to the kilowatt hours and what you used. That's if you're going to compare, that's how you're going to compare. But that's if you're comparing usage. So very important to keep in mind usage versus cost. So if you wanted to compare cost on what the utility is charging you to use that electricity, that's the 19 cents per kilowatt hour. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? I'll take the no questions as that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know and we can certainly try to go over it again in a different way. So just to recap that real quick. So the 29 days at the 49 cents a day is essentially the customer charge is the charge We Energies is charging you strictly to have you as a customer to serve you electricity. The 669 kilowatt hours is how much you used. The 19.342 cents is how much the utility is charging you for those kilowatt hours that you use that month. In this case, 29 days.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Okay. So sometimes I know that there have been people who the meter isn't reading properly. So is this something that I can look at like on my bill versus the meter outside to see if it is reading appropriately or no?
So that might get a little more advanced than we can talk about because there are some slight differences in electrical meters depending on who your provider is and how old your meter is too. Some of the meters have a digital reading on it that say what the reading is. And that's up here on 5. If you look, you can see the actual reading. In this case, on 2.3 was 40,705, and then so they took that reading on the newest date, and then they took it and subtracted it from the actual reading roughly a month earlier, the 29 days earlier on January 5th. and it was 40,036. And that's how they came up with the usage of 669 kilowatt hours. So I would say most people aren't going to be able to track it in that way. So if you think there is an issue with your meter, then I would call We Energies and have them come out and take a look. I believe that's a service they do at no cost. So yeah, if you think there's any kind of issue with your gas meter or your electric meter, that is something that I believe they'll typically come out and verify it's working accurately at no cost to the customer.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then if we jump down to gas, so the gas is pretty much very similar. The only difference is that we're looking for therms, and I guess before I jump down there, so you can, if you see this state low income assistance fee, $3.15, right here, state low income assistance fee, $3.15. So that is essentially, you guys are helping us have a job. So everybody in the state of Wisconsin pays this state low income assistance fee. It's not always called that. Sometimes it's called public benefits fee. Sometimes it's got another name. But everyone that pays a utility bill pays that fee, and every month. And then that goes into essentially a pot of money. And then that pot of money goes back to the state, and then the state divvies it up into what's called the Public Benefits Fund. And 50% of that fund goes to programs like Focus on Energy, who does rebates for energy efficiency. And 50% of that money goes to the weatherization program statewide, to agencies like Casa to provide the weatherization assistance program in Wisconsin. So thank you to all you guys on the call for helping giving me a job and do what I do. So so going back down to gas usage, so same type of process as it was with the electrical. You can see the reading on the gas meter at the newest date here. This was, in this example, it's February 3rd, 26, 1464. And then the initial reading was the previous month's final reading, right? And then that was January 5th, 2026. Once again, the 29 days, and that was 1385. So in this example, you subtract those, you get 79. Basically, I think that's cubic feet of gas. And then they convert that to BTUs, which then equals, they convert it to therms then, which is, you can see the calculation here. Sorry, clicked a button I didn't mean to. And then 83.9 therms. So 83.9 therms is what this sample customer used for that month. And once again, it was 29 days. And the utility is, once again, charging you a standard rate, no matter how much gas you use. They're charging you a rate per day as a standard, like a service charge, right? This is how much we're charging you to just have the service no matter what. And for gas, it's 33 cents a day. It's a little different than electricity. If you remember, electricity was a little over 49 cents a day, and gas is about 33 cents a day. So you're paying just under $1 a day just for We Energies to provide you the service, if that makes sense. And then your 83.9 therms here are charged at about 43.7 cents each. So if you do that math, that's $36.68. And then you'll see there's all kinds of additional things that they kind of tack on here, just like with electricity, additional charges for different things. And each utility is going to be a little bit different. So if you live somewhere else and have a different utility provider other than We Energies, your bill will look similar to this, but not exactly the same. Everyone looks a little bit different. But the key points that I'm bringing up, look for kilowatt hours, look for how much you're charged per kilowatt hour, look for the therm usage, how much you charge per therm. That should be consistent throughout every bill. So in the We Energies bills, they include some kind of comparison usage, and that's over here at 9. So you can see you have February 2026, which is this bill, and then kind of a brief kind of summary of what everything was going on for that month. The billing days was 29. If you remember, that was what they were charging us at here for electricity and gas for how many days. And then the average temp for that month, 20 degrees. The heating degree days. So heating degree days is kind of a specialized to energy use professions, where it's basically how many degrees was it over a certain degree every month, and then they add those all together. Basically, it's the higher the worse it was for heating. That's why that one's called heating degree days. And then you have cooling degree days, which is essentially the same thing in the summer months. So because these are all winter months, February, January, and then February 2025, nobody's using air conditioning, hopefully in the winter months. So there's no cooling degree days for that. So in Wisconsin, once again, if we were in Texas, this thing would be flipped around. And then you have the kilowatt hours used for that month. We kind of reviewed those. And then the average kilowatt hours per day. Once again, this is just a real quick summary of and a comparison that you can kind of use to kind of gauge kind of what's going on if you wanted to and take a closer look at it. What were the average therms per day? And then what was the cost for gas? So that kind of gets into what we were talking about, where if your bill's different, it might not always be usage, and this is kind of where you can tell. So here you could see a year ago in February 2025, the gas price was 45 cents a therm, and now in February 2026, it's 48 cents a therm. So if you're like, oh, I used about the same amount of gas, but what's going on? I'm spending more. It could be just like I mentioned earlier, that the rates have gone up a little bit. And then, so if you wanted to compare yearly basis, like once again, a year ago this month, what did I use compared to this one? So in this example, use slightly more therms, 92.1 to this year was 83.9, except there was more billing days in that month in 2025, right? So you can expect it to be a little more. So all these things you got to kind of take into consideration. If you wanted to take that out, you would have to look at therms per day, right? So if you look at the therms per day down here, 2.9 versus 3, not a big difference, right? So if you look at the therms used, 92.1 versus 83.9, but if you break that down per billing day, it's 2.9 versus 3. So very minimal difference when you're comparing the sample bill from February 26 to February 2025. There's not a big difference there when it comes to usage and gas. If you look at electricity, there is a little bit of difference there. If you look at electricity, 669 this year, average of 23.1 kilowatt hours per day. And then last year at that time, same month, 849 kilowatt hours used, 27.4 per day. So that is a little bit of an increase. So that's a situation where you'd have to look at, all right, did I maybe do some kind of efficiency things, or maybe I was on vacation that month and used less, wasn't using as much stuff. So at that point, you'd have to kind of think about if anything changed, why you're using less electricity this year than you did last year. And it's always good just to think about those things both ways, because sometimes you'll have it increase this month versus the same month a year ago. And you have to think, oh, well, did I use more space heaters this year? Did I purchase, a new hair dryer that I use more often? Any kind of things that you might do kind of in everyday life differently that you didn't do 1 year ago. It's always a good idea to kind of think about those things to put it in perspective. Any question on the We Energy bills? So water bills, super important. I think that's something people forget as well, water and sewer. Not only do you have electricity, natural gas, you have water and sewer to worry about too. And that's directly related to how much water you use. So if you're out there, if you have a leaking faucet, or you forget to turn your outside hose off, or your kids turn the outside hose on and don't turn it off, and that's spraying out gallons and gallons of water, you're probably going to see that impact on your bill. So how do you read that, and what are you looking for? So I believe this is a Waukesha water utility bill sample. So this talks about how they kind of what these things mean. It talks about water use, water service, how you pay public fire protection on there, your return flow use, wastewater use, and wastewater service. So once again, these are all a little bit similar. It's just knowing kind of what they're doing and how they're breaking the services out, and yeah, what you need to look for. So similar to the We Energy bills that we just looked at, you can see that they're billing by days. I think they use average days in here somewhere. So here they're sorry, refreshing myself with this. I haven't looked at this too many times myself. Here they're charging by the amount, thousands of gallons that you use, kind of in a bracket. So if you live in a single family home and you use 0 to like 3,333 gallons, you're paying $7.98. If you use over 3,334 to 10,000, you're paying $10.36. And it talks about your service charges. So depending on the size of the meter you have, that dictates a little bit of your cost. And then same with your fire protection. You can see that here. And then you can see your wastewater return rates down here. So per 1,000 gallons of wastewater. And then they're calculating this. They're breaking it down here for your water service or your water use. So in this example, they have a couple different examples here for water use using 1,700. I don't know if this is two rates to use for companies. Wonderful. So they're using two rates to calculate his bill here. So he's got one side at $10.36 at $17.75, and then this 32, they're almost 3,300 at $7.98. So that would, I apologize, I don't remember the example here on how they're coming up with that. The important part here, I think, is knowing how many thousands of gallons that you used, and looking at that and how that correlates to the amount. And then the actual days for the month is 30. And then they're using an average of 30.417 days in a month. So they're not calculating it necessarily per day. They're using this average and then kind of factoring it in that way. And then they're going by the return water use here. and then the wastewater use here, and then they're calculating this up to roughly $165. So the key part is how many gallons are they measuring that you're using, and they will measure that, and you'll get that on your bill, and you'll see that how many gallons of water, whether that's and they do that by measuring your water meter. A lot of times these days sometimes I don't think they do this much anymore. You guys tell me from Waukesha, they used to have to come into your house every so often and read your water meter. I think now they just drive by and kind of get an electronic service, and it tells them how much you've used. And then they calculate it that way. But this is an important thing to look at, pretty much the same thing you do the electric and gas, and that'll tell you kind of tell you how much you're using in thousands of gallons, and then that'll give you something to compare it against in future months or previous months to figure out if you're using more or less and what the rate was. Any questions on that?
How do you get your son to stop showering for 45 minutes?
Right. Yeah, that I don't know. Turn the hot water off?
Right. Yes. Yes.
All right. So based on kind of those numbers that I just went through, super important to have utilities in your monthly budget and think about that. And that can kind of go into Beth's question about budget billing and budget billing versus monthly billing. I think Beth alluded to kind of the bad part about budget billing. So budget billing is basically the utilities doing the best it can to estimate what your utilities are going to be on a yearly basis, and then kind of splitting that out on a month. So you're not paying, $350 to $400 in the wintertime. You're paying $200 every month. So it's a way of not having to pay those big swings in your utility bills. You know what you're going to pay every month for the most part. The problem is that if the service rates go up a lot, or you use more than what they estimated, they do like a true up at the end of the year. And that's what Beth was alluding to. And that true up can either work in your favor or work against your favor. Usually it's going to work against your favor, and you're going to owe more than what they estimated. It doesn't always work that way, but it seems like most of the time it does, because there's, just like anything else, costs are never going down. Costs are always going up. And if you do that, if the utility does that estimate in the beginning of the year, chances are the costs are going to go up through that year. So you're going to owe a little bit more at the end of the year. But that is a way to always kind of know that your bill is, say, for example, $200 a month, and not have these big swings where in the wintertime it could be $350 to $400 a month. You're kind of paying for that total utility bill throughout the entire year. So, and like Beth kind of mentioned in the beginning, you guys have to decide, if that works better for you, or if paying on a monthly basis works better for you. Once again, it's kind of this: do you want to pay more expensive bills in the winter and probably less expensive bills in the summer? Or do you just want one bill that you can count on throughout the whole entire year? Kind of your guys' decision and what works best for you. And then kind of building that budget, like we talked about, you want to track and monitor seasonal changes. Like that gets into that decision too, on whether you want to use a budget plan or you want to use the pay on a monthly basis, no matter what it is. Because like you guys know, I mean, we've talked about, you're going to have higher bills in the winter. It's just more than likely. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't have air conditioning or use air conditioning as much as other people, so the bills are typically just going to be lower in the in the summertime. Plus, you're not using as much gas in the summertime because we're not heating our homes in the summertime. And then set aside some emergency funds. That's something you want to think about too. Doesn't have to be something ridiculous, but maybe a couple hundred extra dollars, a few hundred extra dollars, if possible. Just because you never know what's going to happen. Rates can go up. Your bills can go up for unknown reasons if you add something, and just to have a little bit more set aside just for these emergency things that happen. Sometimes you can have some of these really cold months that we have can increase your bill by 50 to $100 a month. So if you remember, I think, when was it, in January, February, I think we had a couple really cold stretches. And those can have a big impact on your bill if you're paying on a monthly basis. So why budget and have an emergency fund? So heads up for everyone, the Public Service Commission, who is a state entity that kind of regulates utilities and makes sure that they can't kind of overcharge. They have a lot in regulating them as far as what they can charge, what they can do, what they can build new power plants. The PSC really has a huge hand in all of that. They approved for the utilities to raise natural gas rates beginning January 1st, 2027. So that is, coming up here in 4 or 5 months. So in 4 or 5 months, your bill will likely increase by $8 to $12 per month. And obviously that's a little bit dependent on your usage, but that means your utility bills are going to be $80 to $120, $150 more a year than what they were this year. So that's going to have a big impact on people. And I'm anticipating calls to our department wondering why bills are going up. So these are the kind of things, unfortunately, that when customers don't understand kind of the impacts of these kind of things, will weatherize their home, and then they'll say, well, now that you weatherized our home, our bills went up. And it's like, well, yes, that's true, but it wasn't because of us weatherizing your home. It was because your utility rates went up, and that can be a hard thing for people to understand, because for some customers, the timing is just right where they are pretty much sold that because we weatherized their house, their bills went up, which isn't the case. So if you remember, our average yearly utility cost was about $3,100, if I remember right. Now it's going to probably be about $3,300 would be my guess. Yeah, Crystal.
Are there specific ways that you can find if you have leaks in your home, and like where those would be?
Yeah, I mean, there is. So you can, if we have a specialized like big fan that it's called a blower door test that we put into people's doors, and it tells us basically simulates a 20-mile-per-hour wind on every side of the house, and that lets us identify it. For people to identify it on their own, if you have a windy day, most people know where the drafty spots are in their homes, whether it's around windows or around doors. A lot of times, if it is windy outside, you'll be able to feel those drafts. And yeah, whether that's weather stripping your door, caulking around windows, putting some weather stripping around windows, putting the plastic on the windows, like there's some very kind of simple, cost-effective ways that people can kind of treat those areas to kind of minimize leaks. And air sealing is one of the most cost-effective things you can do. It's a very you can also use some of that can foam, the spray can foam. If you have a hole somewhere in your foundation, for example, or any kind of other holes that are larger gaps, that foam can seal those up at a pretty cost-effective rate. Just remember that if you do use foam for air sealing anything, that the sunlight breaks it down. So if you are using it on the outside, the sun will break that foam down and deteriorate it over time. So if you ever do use foam on the outside, you want to paint it and cover it up so that the sun doesn't break it down. Good question. Thanks, Crystal.
Okay.
We'll touch on some low cost energy savings. LED bulbs are super easy and cost effective to do. These are something where you can get focus on energy rebates on them a lot, and nowadays they're pretty cheap. You can get 6, 8, 12 of them for probably less than $1 a piece, or about $1 a piece at the big box stores. I guess don't forget that not just inside your house, but outside your house, there are light bulbs that are rated for outside use. So make sure that if you're installing the LEDs outside, that they're rated for outside. So putting them outside in porches and garages, outside light fixtures that you have, sheds. These are spots that usually require a lot of light, and people don't think about upgrading the light bulbs in there. Air sealing the drafts, we touched on that a little bit. Weather strip doors, install plastic over the windows. You can get some kits from Energy Assistance or We Energies, usually on a yearly basis, that have either some of the plastic, or they give out kits that have a couple light bulbs, like a shower head. They give out some energy saving kits like in the fall usually. Seal any cracks or holes. We mentioned that with that foam, that can foam, 1-part foam. Don't leave attic or crawl space areas open. So kind of seal those up. You don't want to leave, if you have, for example, a storage area in your attic, you don't want to leave that door open from the house to the attic. You want to make sure that stays shut. They sell kind of like foam gaskets, almost like weather stripping, that you can install in your electrical outlets. Sometimes people will get cold drafts coming out of their electrical outlets, and those gaskets are a really easy thing to install on your own and very cheap and cost effective. You can also get those child kind of safety plugs if you feel air coming out the gaps on the outlets, and plug those in the outlets to stop the cold air from coming in. If you have a fireplace, making sure the damper is closed is huge, because if you do have a fireplace and that damper is open, that's however big your flue is, hole, usually an 6 to 8 inch hole right to the outside. If you have that damper open, and if it doesn't work, they sell kind of inflatable plugs that you can purchase that seals those off. Sometimes if you have a fireplace, the damper is old and maybe it's broken, doesn't seal the way it should, and having these other things that options that you can buy to put in there to stop, because it's just a hole directly to the outside, will stop that. If you have a cracked window, if it's not a huge crack, you can just use some clear silicone and put caulk on each side to seal that up. It also then strengthens the window, right? If it's that's if it's probably less than the size of a dollar bill. If it's bigger than the size of a dollar bill, you should probably have the crack, the window pane fixed. But if it's a dollar bill size or smaller, you can probably seal it up with silicone and be just fine. And real simple thing you can do is make sure windows and their storm windows are fully closed and latched. I can't tell you how common it is to go into someone's house and see that the window is dropped, the top sash is dropped down 1 inch or 2 inches, and that's just letting cold air in. Really simple thing to do is in the wintertime or in the fall, before you really close up your house for the winter and want to seal everything in, is just walk around and make sure those windows are all the way closed and latched and locked. And your phone and your storm windows are also all the way closed. It makes a big difference. More things you can do is you can change the filters on your furnace. If you have a forced air furnace, you're going to have a filter in there, and changing that helps the furnace operate more efficiently, and it'll save you a little bit of money as well. And it'll help kind of lengthen the life of the furnace, of the heating system. So for the filters, they have something called a MERV rating. The higher the rating, the smaller the particulates are that it catches, but you have to be a little careful. You don't want to go super high because that may reduce the amount of air that can move through that thing, and that can through the filter, and that can hurt your furnace. So we usually recommend like MERV 6 to MERV 8. in that range. Smart thermostat habits. So if you have a thermostat that can be set automatically, then you can program that to kind of with your lifestyle. So if you go to work every day or every night, you can set that to so it turns down to save energy. If you don't have a programmable thermostat, you can do that on your own. So just adjusting your thermostat when you're not home one way or another, whether it's summertime now, you turn the heat up, right? So maybe you like it at 74 degrees, but when you're not home, you can turn it to 78 degrees. And at that little bit helps quite a bit. And it doesn't take long on a forced air furnace to bring your house back to the temperature you want it typically. So having it set back so you save energy while you're not there, say for 6-8 hours, is a lot more efficient than having it keep that temperature you want that long. And then unplugging any kind of electronics that you're not using, whether that's cell phone chargers, anything. If you have an appliance, a refrigerator, freezer that has nothing in it, no use in running it, make sure you unplug it. Anything else that you have plugged in that you rarely use, make sure you unplug them, because a lot of these appliances use a ton of electricity, even if they're not powered on and using them. Do you guys remember how much, what percentage of usage lighting electronics were for a house? Do you guys remember that number?
30?
Yeah, you got it, 30%. So if 30% of your energy use comes from these electronics and lighting, that you have a potential high impact item there, which is a really easy thing to do, is just unplug something if you're not using it often.
So like Patrick, you mean like my coffee maker, like that is not on or anything? You're saying like that it's plugged in the wall that's using energy right now?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. How much?
Come on.
Yeah, how much? I don't know. But there are some there are some things that actually
that is so tricky.
Gaming console.
Now I'm gonna, after 8 o'clock, I'm gonna start snatching everything out of my wall.
Yeah, it can make a decent difference. So gaming consoles, I know, are one thing that's really, or computers. Those are things that are used quite a bit of electricity, even if you're not using them. And you got to be careful with computers, obviously. And I'm not telling you guys to go around and unplug everything, but there are things, it's just to be aware of. There are things that can use a fair amount of electricity, even if you're not using them. You want to make sure you maintain your furnace and air conditioner. That makes an efficiency difference. So if you, just like anything, right, if it gets dirty, almost like oil changes in your car doesn't run as efficient if you don't maintain it, right? So same thing for your furnace and air conditioner. You want to get probably tune-ups at least every other year. Every year would be ideal, but not absolutely necessary. I would say probably every other year is necessary to have your furnace tuned up. And then that just keeps it running at the optimum efficiency. Also, it's a good health and safety check for your furnace to make sure everything's running the way it should and there's no concerns for that upcoming heating season. Make sure you replace the filters regularly. The air filters in the furnace should be replaced or checked at least probably once a month. Doesn't mean you have to necessarily replace them, but you probably want to look at it and make sure that it's relatively clean and not completely plugged up with something. And then make sure if you have, this is all for forced air furnace. So if you have hot water heat, say a boiler, this doesn't really apply to boilers. This is more for forced air furnaces. So if you have registers in your home and you feel air coming out of it, this is for you. So make sure that you keep the vents or registers clear. So it's common for people to put furniture in front of them or on top of them, or cover them up with curtains. You want to make sure that you keep all the registers as clear as possible. And they also get dirty over time. Kids stick stuffed animals down them potentially, or Hot Wheels or whatever. You want to make sure that they're clear. Vacuum them out on occasion. Make sure airflow can get through there nice and easy. Once again, don't block them with furniture. Your furnace relies on the air going in and out to operate the way it's supposed to. So if you obstruct that air coming through the vents, you can ruin your furnace prematurely. So it can overheat and then shut down. And then if it does that over an extended period of time, it actually could ruin your furnace. And a furnace these days, so furnace prices, at least for us in weatherization, have gone up about 42% in the last 2 years. So furnace equipment prices in general, with all the tariffs, with COVID, all these price increases we've had since COVID, mechanical equipment has gone up a significant amount since COVID. So like for us, like I said, it's 42% over the last 2 years. So doing things by accident that would shorten the life of your furnace is going to cost you in the long run. So try to make sure those vents are open and not obstructed. Got a quick video here on changing an air filter.
Hi, this is Marty with Liberty Homes. Today we're going to talk about your furnace. Furnace does require some maintenance to ensure that it is operating correctly. What you're going to find at the furnace is that you have what we call a return air and a supply air. Located between those is going to be a chamber that houses your filter. Your filter must be replaced and maintained to ensure that the furnace can operate. You will open up the chamber and check your filter regularly. The filter that we have selected here is rated as a 90-day filter. What that means is this filter will help our furnace operate for a period of 90 days, but beyond that, we would need to replace the filter. What we're going to do is remove the old filter, take out our new filter, and on our new filter, we're going to find that on the edge of it, it has an arrow. The arrow is dictating to us what the airflow is. The way the airflow of a furnace works is return air, supply air, air flows from this chamber through the filter into the furnace. So we want to make sure that the airflow arrow is pointing towards the furnace so that the filter is working properly. Once you have your filter aiming the right direction, slide it into the chamber and close the chamber door. Then we'll come back down in 90 days and we'll do it all over again.
So talk a little bit about water conservation. Fixing water leaks or drips. It's super important. There's things, if you're able to do it yourself, sometimes just tightening a bolt or a nut can help kind of slow down or stop water leaks. If you have a toilet that's running all the time, make sure you kind of listen for that, right? So a lot of times you'll hear what sounds like water running, and there'll be a part in the toilet, or the flapper in the toilet maybe is just ajar and it's not stopping the water. And it's just a matter of adjusting that stopper so that the water doesn't constantly run and you're using all that water for no reason. A toilet constantly running can use a lot of water. So it's just really important to kind of listen and pay attention. And as you live in your house every day, you know what's kind of the common noises that you hear. And if you hear something sounds like water running, make sure you investigate and either try to fix it yourself or call a plumber. Because more than likely, like calling a plumber is going to offset a lot of that cost that you have. You might think, oh, a plumber is expensive, but if you end up paying another $100 on your water bill, that's also going to be expensive. Make sure you install low flow fixtures. There's tips on the faucets that help save water. So you can make a big impact just by installing a new tip on your faucet. So a new tip on your faucet can save you gallons of water on a monthly basis. And that's a really simple thing to do. It just screws on to the faucet. You got to have the right size, but then you can save probably, the typical is more than a gallon a minute with the new upgraded fixed with the new aerators. And those things are only like $1. So really simple thing you can do on your own to help save water. Same thing with shower heads. You can get a new shower head that saves water for 10 to 20 bucks, and you could be saving a couple gallons of water a minute with by replacing that shower head. And by replacing that shower head, not only are you saving water, you're also kind of extending the length of the showers that you can take, because not only you're conserving water in general, but you're also conserving hot water, right? So now say you cut your water usage in half, you can take twice as long of showers because you've cut your water usage in half with that shower head. So hopefully you don't just now offset that by saying I'm going to take twice as long of showers, but I think you guys understand what I'm saying. Make sure you wash full loads and not partial loads. I think that's a little better with some of the newer washing machines, but always better to wash full loads if you're using kind of the normal cycles. Your water heater temperature, also important to pay attention to. So usually kind of right in the middle of your temperature settings on your water heater is the kind of the 120 degree mark roughly. So you want to turn it there, and you don't want it, if you wanted to check, you can always take a thermometer and measure it at the closest faucet to the water heater, and just turn your hot water on and put the thermometer under there, and that'll tell you how hot the water is, and then if you have to adjust it one way or another. So it's kind of a tight window that they say basically 120 to 125 degrees. They say no lower than 120 because you can have a certain specific type of bacteria that builds up in the water that causes Legionnaire's disease, and that can be a deadly thing. So you don't want to turn your water heater temperature down too low, but at the same time, if it's up over 125 degrees, that can be a scalding hazard for mainly children. If you have baby hands like me, then that can be a scalding hazard for adults too. But they're mainly talking about children above 125 degrees that it can be a scalding hazard. Any questions so far? No? All right, I'll keep going. Appliances and lighting, we touched on these a little bit. Energy Star appliances, if you're going to upgrade, run dishwashers and run them on full loads. Don't run partial loads. Don't use the drying, like the heated dry, because essentially that's like a big toaster. Use the air dry when possible. Wash your clothes in cold water. And then this isn't really energy related, but it might save you money. I've read studies that say you don't need to use hardly any laundry detergent when you do your loads. I heard just a tablespoon or two of laundry detergent is all you need for a full load. Anything more than that is overkill. It can actually cause dirt to stick on your clothes. So I think a lot of people are probably using way more laundry detergent than they have to, and that's not a cheap thing either. So you can get away with probably a lot less laundry detergent than you're using. And also doesn't do a lot of benefit to wash your clothes in hot water. Make sure on a dryer that you clean your lint filter after every use. Your dryer uses airflow, and if it can't get that airflow, then it's going to take a lot longer to dry your clothes, and you're going to use more electricity. It's going to cost you more. In the summertime, real simple. If you're using air conditioning, try to not cook in the house and heat the house up. If you got a grill, fire up the grill and do some cooking outside and save from heating your house up. And then don't put hot foods in the refrigerator. So if you put hot foods in the refrigerator has to work harder to cool that down. So make sure if you're putting leftovers in the refrigerator that you leave them on the counter maybe for a little bit and let them cool off first. All right, so energy guide label. So this is what you'll see on new appliances. This energy guide label kind of makes it real simple to compare appliances to each other to see which one is more energy efficient. You can see in the middle here that the estimated yearly operating cost for this example is $67. And it is on the upper left, it's a refrigerator freezer. through the door ice, 23 cubic feet. So it's a decent size refrigerator. So $67 a year. So if you were trying to look at, hopefully you're looking, kind of paying attention to different energy uses of appliances, not just looking at features. You're also looking at energy use and how much that's going to cost you. So there can be a big difference. So if you are comparing a new appliance, you want to look at this energy guide sticker and take that in consideration to what you're going to buy. So a little bit of a trick question here, but what appliance do you think uses more electricity, a toaster or a refrigerator? Someone want to take a guess?
Refrigerator.
Refrigerator. All right. So trick question, that a toaster actually uses almost 4 times as much electricity as a refrigerator, right? So kind of surprising, right? This little appliance. What do you think the difference is between the toaster and the refrigerator? Any guesses? How long do you use a toaster? Maybe like 3 minutes at a time, 3-4 minutes at a time. So even though this toaster uses 4 times as much electricity as a refrigerator, you're only running the toaster for like 3 minutes, right? So the refrigerator uses a lot less, but you're running it 24/7 all the time, right? It's always plugged in. It's probably running on average once an hour at least. So even though the refrigerator is way bigger, it's using less, but it's running way more than the toaster. So kind of a trick question. So just to put numbers on it, little toaster uses about 1,100 watts per hour. The big refrigerator uses about 225 watts per hour, but the refrigerator is on almost all the time, where the toaster is only on for a few minutes at a time. So, and these are the kind of things that can really add up in your electric bill. I've seen instances where people use a certain specialized electrical device, like something for their hair, or once again, like a video game console that's on all the time, or a gaming computer. And that little thing can really run up your bill 10, 20, 30 bucks a month and have a big impact. All right, so talking about a little bit about home maintenance and things to look at from that aspect. You really want to make sure you clean gutters and downspouts and make sure there's a good way for that water to get away from your house. Any kind of bulk water, whether it's a roof leak, whether it's a grading issue where that water is running back to the house, that bulk water is attributed to 90% of all building failures. So it's a huge percentage of building issues that crop up from bulk water not being kind of taken away from the house. And then you want to look, is the grading around the house sufficient? I have some pictures to show that coming up. Inspect weather stripping, make sure that it's still in good condition. If it's not, replace it. Pretty easy thing to do. A lot of people could probably do that on their own. Install plastic on windows in the winter. Once again, a really cost-effective thing to do. And sometimes you can get free kits in the fall. Usually, once again, We Energies gives those out. Make sure you test smoke and CO alarms and make sure they work, and replace them at least every 10 years. Something you can do is kind of check insulation levels, pop your head in the attic, or if you got a walk-in attic, walk in there and see how much, if any, insulation is in there. A good insulation level would probably be 8 inches. If you got 8 inches or more, I'd say you're probably doing pretty good. 8 inches or less, you probably could use some more. Also, if you have any insulation in the exterior walls, if you ever take an outlet off, or if you ever do any remodeling and you notice, that's something to just keep in mind if you see any insulation in your walls or not. Make sure you clean your dryer vent annually. We talked about how the airflow has a big effect on dryers, but it also, what can happen is that lint can clog up in the vent, and then over time it can restrict the airflow and then actually start on fire in some occurrences. So it is a fairly common cause of house fires in this country. I think about 14% of all house fires are caused by dryer vents and not having them cleaned out. So it is something that you want to try to do fairly regularly. When I say regularly, like annually if possible. It's amazing how much stuff comes out of there sometimes. So here's an example of bad drainage and the type of water problem that can really cause significant problems to your house. So if you see things like this, and you can see the gutter here that just drains right here into this low area, and then the water just sits there. So this can be a common cause for water leaking back into the basement, because that water's got to go somewhere. It's eventually going to drain and it can work its way back in there. Having this all evenly graded, so there's no kind of low areas, and extending that gutter out away from the house a little more would certainly help in this area and give it less of a potential for any kind of problems. Same thing here. Sometimes you'll see kind of low areas that match the roof line if there's no gutters, or if the gutters aren't working properly around a house, that'll actually cause the water to run back towards the house, which that is a problem too. Anytime the water is accumulating like this around the house, you're asking for significant problems. You can essentially ruin your foundation and ruin your house if you don't do something to address it. And the easiest way to address it is to get some dirt and fill that in and grade it so it's like a little bit of a hill, so the water runs away from the house. And that's something a lot of people can do on their own too, and isn't super pricey. And it's going to save you a ton of money in the long term. Here's some examples of dryer vents that are obstructed. So you can see how these are just plugged up with stuff. And the one on the left, you can see that's more lint and hair. The one on the right, you can see that's probably a bird nest. There's grass and pine needles and everything in there. So you want to double check and go around and make sure those are free and obstructed from things as well, so that it's not a fire hazard and it is working as efficiently as possible. So we have, in weatherization department, we have all these specialized tools, right? But you don't always need specialized tools to see how much insulation you have in your home. So we call snow the poor man's infrared camera. So an infrared camera shows hot and cold, but snow on the roof in the wintertime can show you what houses have good insulation and what don't most of the time too. So if you see a house like this, chances are this house doesn't have very good insulation. You can see that the snow is melting off the roof, and then it's freezing again at the gutter area, at the edge of the roof. And what can happen here is you can get what's called ice damming, and that freezing and thawing can work its way back up into the shingles and underneath the shingles and cause water leaks in your roof and really kind of mess up your roof over time. So, but it also, just driving around your neighborhood, if you look at people's roofs, if you notice some roofs keep snow on and some roofs don't, the ones that don't probably need air sealing and insulation. So we won't spend a lot of time on this slide, and this form just kind of touches on a lot of the things that we've talked about so far in this presentation. I know I'm going longer than I should have. Now we'll talk about kind of other programs that can help. So there's the Wisconsin Home Energy Assistance Program, or WEAP for short. So this is a program that can help pay for some of your utility costs. So it is an income-based program, and it is a once-a-year benefit. The average benefit is $350 this year, at least. It changes a little bit every year depending on funding and depending on how many people apply. Just in La Casa's service area, so we service about half of the city of Milwaukee County, Waukesha County, and Jefferson County. We have 50,000 to 60,000 people that get this benefit. So they have made things, this is a state-run program with state money and federal money. They have made it easier to apply for. You can apply online if you want. Otherwise, there are certain agencies like La Casa around the state that will take your application and process it and let you know if you qualify and will get the benefit or not. And then if you qualify for WEAP, that automatically qualifies you for the weatherization program, which is what I do, right? So that program is a no-cost program if as long as you pay the utilities, and we do a bunch of energy upgrades at no cost. So we do insulation, air sealing, new appliances, new furnace, new water heater. All these things have to pay for themselves in energy over the life of the item, or it has to be a health and safety measure. But these are all things that we can potentially do in the program. We do exhaust fans, shower heads, aerators, those water saving items that I mentioned. We do those. We do some other health and safety things like smoke alarms, CO alarms. So yeah, it's a kind of a whole house program. We hit the house from a lot of angles, and usually it's a pretty significant amount of work that we do to your home, and it's all at no cost. We Energies also has a weatherization program of their own. And then Waukesha Water Utility also has some programs on their own. If you guys are interested, I would just recommend calling them. We don't know everything that's available as far as what they do, and sometimes they change the programs that they have. And then there's always Focus on Energy rebates. So Focus on Energy has a website with all kinds of rebates for lots of different things, whether that's weatherizing your house, insulation, air sealing, solar, renewables. Like Paul talked about, they give some rebates for that. Unfortunately, in weatherization, we don't do a ton with renewables, but Focus on Energy has rebates for that. And then you have Habitat for Humanity, so they do some good things too. They're a resource for both repairs and probably some efficiency things, but their main goal is um, usually housing in general and repairs, not so much weatherization and energy efficiency. But when they do some of those repairs or that housing stuff, they do make sure it is energy efficient. City of Milwaukee, they have the Me Too energy efficiency program, which is a kind of a whole house weatherization program, and that's a loan program. There's also the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, that is incentives and tax credits for energy saving work and equipment. And then there's a program kind of related to that called the Basement Insulation Grant and Rebate Program, that is geared, just like it kind of says in the title, that program is geared to insulating people's basements when you have a pretty significant amount of your basement above ground. I want to say more than 1.5 feet above ground, because there's some pretty significant savings there when you insulate that area. Any questions on those programs? No? All right, so just kind of a quick summary and kind of action plan. So try to pick 3 improvements this month that you guys can do to save energy. Try to monitor your utility bills, and then try to build your emergency savings just in case. Never know when you're going to need them. And then I just put kind of questions and resources. And I don't know, Alicia, do we have contacts for the participants on the presentation that we can send them maybe some other resources?
Yeah, I have everybody's email.
Okay.
And is it okay if I send them this presentation as well, or?
Sure. Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
so
Yeah.
I can send you guys a PDF of this presentation. I'll mark it down to do that. And then, yeah, I can also, like, you guys, if they have questions, Patrick, do you want
Yeah,
me
absolutely.
to
They can
give
reach
them
out to
you?
me. Yeah, if you
Okay.
wanna include my contact information, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'll put it all in one email. Um, so that way everything's together for them. What else was Oh, I was gonna say too, for like budgeting for maintenance. That's one of the things that we can help you with too at La Casa at our CFS building. We can actually help you guys put together a maintenance savings plan. Whether you're already a homeowner or whether you're going into homeownership, that's something that we can help you with too. So I know, because sometimes budgeting sounds like a a scary word. Like you don't want to think about budgeting, but it's actually really good to look at all that. So that's something we can help you with.
Do want to add to that that we will be hosting a workshop that's going to be just on budgeting for your home. So we'll definitely be putting that out. So pay attention for those flyers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, first time I've done this, so I wasn't expecting it to take quite as long as it did. So I appreciate you bearing with me and sticking through it.
No, you're fine. I think we had scheduled until 8 anyways, but we do that so that way there is enough time because I know sometimes
Okay.
it's good that we have these questions because this is really important and I was able to put the links to the previous slide into the chat, but they'll be on the presentation that I'm going to send you guys that Patrick created. But no, it definitely, this was really great information, and we appreciate you being here, Patrick, and
Yeah.
giving your expertise on all this info. And if there's other questions, you guys can feel free to unmute or raise your hand and ask right now.
One question.
Sure.
When we talked about energy, right, when it comes to the appliances that we have plugged in all the time, when we use our power strips and we turn those off, but the power strips stay on, does that cut it off completely, or is that
Yeah.
power strip still getting that electricity?
Yeah, that's a great question, Crystal. So the answer is some cut that off and some don't. So if you're looking for to do that, that's a good point. You certainly can purchase some of those power strips, and some of the power strips do cut off any electricity when it's not being used. So that's a good point to look for those kind of power strips. But yeah, it kind of course, the ones that do are a little more expensive, right? So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. That's a
Any
great point.
questions, you guys? Oh, well, this was really great, Patrick. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'll provide your contact info in that email. So if anything pops up after this class, feel free to reach out to Patrick. But we're really happy that you guys were here. I know this is a lot of good info. And then stay tuned for other classes that we have coming up for in the master class series. We're really excited to be able to be providing these because it's a lot of really great info for people. So yeah, just stay tuned. We have our Facebook page for La Casa de Esperanza. I send them out on MailChimp, which you guys probably all receive too, because a lot of your names are familiar. But yeah, just stay tuned. We have a bunch of awesome workshops coming up. But I think that's all on our end. So we'll stay on until the last person gets off, but thank you guys. I hope you have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good night.
you.
See.
Maybe I can just end it. I'll just end it. I think that everyone. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Yeah, Alicia, do you have the presentation? I thought I sent it to you.
Yes, I do have it. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Just want to make sure.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good night,
you.
everyone.
You
Bye-bye.
too.